Hi guys, it's Chris and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the biggest purchase I made this year, and that is the Sony A7R IV. Now, I'm mainly a video shooter, and so I just wanted to make a video on whether I think this would be a suitable camera for mainly video shooting. Now, before we get into it, it'd be really appreciated if you give a thumbs up down below, and obviously comment down below all your opinions and questions. I've used the camera for a couple of weeks now, so if you want to know anything about it, let me know. And do you think it's suitable for video use? Now, I should preface this by saying I wasn't actually going to get this camera originally. My A6500 broke the morning of a wedding, and so I went to the shop. The A7R IV had just come out, and so I wanted to just try that out. I've now been using it alongside the A7 III for a few weeks, and I just wanted to share my opinion on whether it's worth the big price tag for video shooters. So let's get straight into it. The first thing I wanted to talk about is the design. Some people might think this is unimportant, but actually this makes a big difference with this camera. And obviously they've changed the size of the grip, so it's now slightly bigger. They've changed the buttons, so they're a little bit more clickier. And you also get locks on the exposure compensation and the mode switcher here. So yeah, it is slightly bigger, but the camera actually feels much better in the hand now. And I don't know whether they've improved the IBIS in this, but I've actually managed to get much steadier handheld video shots with the A7R IV than I did with the A7 III. And I don't know whether that's because the IBIS has maybe slightly been improved, or whether it's just this handle making it easier to hold. These things are obviously quite minimal, doesn't justify the 800 quid extra price tag on top of the A7 III, but I am looking forward to all Sony full frame bodies having this design in the future, because I do think it's much better. Now, software wise, you get the A6400's amazing autofocus and the autofocus tracking, which in theory is sick. In perfect lighting conditions, it is actually really good. I've enjoyed putting the camera on a gimbal, tapping something to lock on to focus, and then just focusing on my framing and my gimbal movements without having to keep tapping to move the focus around as I'm moving. But in everything other than perfect lighting conditions, sometimes it will fail. Particularly backlit conditions, it really struggles to focus on that face and that eye, and sometimes you just lock onto the background for no particular reason. Even in okay conditions, if you're focusing on an eye and a hand goes past it or something goes past it, the focus tracking won't try and stay there, it will completely move and follow whatever's going past it. Now obviously autofocus tracking is amazing, and I've seen for photo that is actually really good, but for video, for me anyway, I think the A7 III autofocus is actually a little bit more reliable. So on a side note, let's get into the nitty gritty. It's still the same video as even the A7S II, so you still get that 4K at only up to 30 frames instead of 60 frames. You still get HD up to 120 frames per second. It's still all 8-bit. So just the old Sony video, there's nothing new here at all in terms of the codecs. Another thing that's quite small for some people, but actually is a big thing for me, is they've got rid of the recording limit. This is now the only Sony full frame camera you can get that doesn't have the 30-minute recording limit, and that is really nice. For me, when I'm filming weddings, sometimes I'm filming solo, and it's nice just to put the camera at the back of the church and not have to worry about the recording limit running over and me running down the aisle just to turn the camera back on. In terms of useful video features, that is literally about it. It's worth noting also that the A7 III performs much better in low light, as expected because of the 61 megapixel sensor on the A7R IV. I'll talk a little bit about photos, but it's not my speciality, so bear with me. The file sizes, even in compressed RAW, are ridiculous, as expected for a 61 megapixel full frame sensor. I've recently been doing some photo work at a pub, and I've been stitching photos together in Lightroom, and I can tell you the file sizes are so massive that when you're stitching these files in Lightroom, I swear my computer, when stitching these photos together in Lightroom, I swear my computer almost had a cardiac arrest. It was going crazy. So bear in mind, you're going to need a pretty powerful computer to do this, and the panoramas took about 5 to 10 minutes to actually create after that. In these sort of conditions, the dynamic range was great, but there seems to be a lot more noise in the photos than on the A7 III. Again, I think this is because of the 61 megapixel sensor, but again, I don't like to take a lot of photos, so I'm not sure if there are ways to get around that. A big advantage of the A7R IV for photo, in my opinion, is the ability to shoot in Super 35 mode and still have the megapixels to produce a sharp image. So this effectively turns a prime lens into two different focal lengths. So for example, you could use a 24 and a 55, and they'd be sort of equivalent to your 35 and your 85. So two lenses will become four, which is a really nice advantage. I've been using crop mode on the A7 III for video for quite a while, because obviously it doesn't reduce the quality at all, but it's nice that now you can do it with photo and still have enough megapixels to mess around with. For me though, for photo, as a video shooter, I still prefer the A7 III because the file size is a bit smaller for photo, and I'm not really too bothered about the tracking because I'm not taking that many photos. So what's my verdict? Should you buy the A7R IV for video? No, I don't think you should. In my opinion, it's a step in the right direction for Sony. The body design is really, really nice. The autofocus tracking is going to be amazing, but for me, with shooting weddings, I'm shooting in less than ideal conditions some of the times, and the autofocus tracking isn't reliable. I actually still prefer it on the A7 III. For serious solo, event or wedding shooters, you get that unlimited record time, which is really, really nice to have. But what essentially you're paying for is 1800 quid extra on top of the A7 III, just for the 61 megapixels here, which for video at least is more of a hindrance than a benefit. So Sony is in a bit of a weird position at the moment where they've kind of split the market. When the A7 III came out, in my opinion, it was an amalgamation of some of the best technologies that Sony had to offer, and it was the camera to buy if people wanted to switch to Sony. But now they've introduced eye autofocus in video, real-time tracking in video, and the unlimited record limit. But in terms of Sony full-frame cameras, the only camera that does that is the Sony A7R IV. If you want a cheaper camera that does that, then you have to look at the A6400 or the A6600, which are crop sensor cameras. So if you want a full-frame Sony camera with autofocus tracking in video and unlimited recording limit, this is literally the only choice. So my opinion for video shooters, if you haven't got a Sony full-frame camera and you're looking to get one, get the A7 III. If you've already got one and you're looking to upgrade, don't upgrade yet, maybe hold out till next year for the A7 IV, or dare I say it, the A7S III. If neither of those come out but you still want the improvements, then the A7R IV will probably be a lot cheaper by then, and you'll be able to get them second hand in a variety of different places. I think the technology has advanced enough now since the A7 III for Sony to come up with an answer to it, an A7 IV and A7S III, with hopefully the autofocus tracking abilities, the unlimited record time, and maybe 4K 60. Okay, that's it from me. I really hope this video has helped you. If you liked it, then leave a like rating down below. And if you've got any comments or opinions, then obviously leave them in the comments section, and I'll try and reply to as much as I can. And if you like these kind of videos, then do subscribe down below. I'll talk about all kinds of cameras, from pocketable cameras like the Osmo Pocket to powerhouses like the A7R IV. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.